The room was supposed to be calm. Cameras were rolling, lights were hot, and what began as a routine sit-down instantly turned into a moment no one could have prepared for. When Mona Scott Young leaned forward to address lingering tensions, no one expected the conversation with Rasheeda to explode into one of the most shocking confrontations fans have ever witnessed. Voices rose, faces tightened, and before anyone could step in, Kirk Frost crossed a line that sent shockwaves through the entire room, hurling a word that froze everyone in place: bitch. In that instant, emotions ran high, jaws dropped, and producers scrambled as the tension became undeniable. Fans are shocked by how fast the energy shifted, from carefully chosen words to raw, unfiltered rage. What was supposed to be a measured conversation about loyalty, respect, and long-simmering resentment suddenly spiraled into a full-blown blow-up that exposed cracks no one wanted to admit were there. Rasheeda's eyes filled with disbelief. Mona's expression hardened, a mix of authority and offense clashing in real time. And Kirk? He looked like a man pushed to the edge, unapologetic and ready for war. Whispers rippled through the room. Was this about control? Was it about disrespect that had been building for years behind the scenes? Or was there a deeper betrayal threatening to tear everything apart? As security shifted closer and the air grew thick with tension, one thing became painfully clear: this wasn't just a heated exchange. This was the moment where alliances were tested, boundaries were shattered, and the family was left divided, setting the stage for a fallout no one will soon forget. The silence after Kirk's word landed was heavier than any shout that came before it. Cameras kept rolling, catching every twitch of Mona's jaw, every shallow breath Rasheeda took as she tried to process what had just happened. Nobody moved at first, not the producers, not the assistants, not even the friends sitting just feet away. It was the kind of moment that fans live for but the people inside the room dread, because once it happens, there's no rewinding it. Mona slowly leaned back in her chair, her eyes locked on Kirk, not angry yet, but sharp, calculating, like she was deciding whether this was worth her energy or about to become a lesson nobody would forget. Rasheeda broke the silence first, her voice shaking but controlled. "You not gonna talk to her like that," she said, turning toward Kirk with disbelief written all over her face. "I don't care how mad you are, you not gonna disrespect her in front of me." Kirk scoffed, running a hand over his face, pacing like a caged animal. "Nah, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about," he snapped. "Everybody wanna act like I'm the bad guy when nobody wanna hear my side." Emotions ran high, and the air felt electric, like one wrong word could set everything on fire again. Mona finally spoke, her tone calm but cutting. "Kirk, you can disagree with me, you can even be angry, but what you will not do is speak to me like that," she said, her voice steady enough to make the room lean in. Fans would later say this was the moment they knew the conversation had gone somewhere dark, because Kirk didn't back down. Instead, he laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "See, that's the problem. You think you control everything. You think you can say whatever you want and we just supposed to take it." Rasheeda's eyes widened. "Control everything? Kirk, what are you even talking about right now?" she asked, frustration bubbling over. He stopped pacing and turned toward Rasheeda, pointing a finger as if years of resentment were pouring out at once. "I'm talking about how every time I try to protect my family, somehow I'm painted like the villain. You sit here, she sits here, and suddenly I'm the monster." The family was left divided right there in that room, because Rasheeda looked torn between defending her husband and standing up for what she felt was right. "This ain't about you being a villain," she said quietly. "This about respect. And you crossed a line." Her words seemed to hit him harder than any shout could have. Around them, whispers started. One producer leaned toward another, asking if security should step in. A close friend sitting nearby covered her mouth in shock. Fans watching later would say this was the moment where everything changed, where the tension stopped feeling performative and started feeling painfully real. Mona adjusted the papers in front of her, a subtle move that spoke volumes. "Let's be clear," she said, eyes still on Kirk. "Nobody here is attacking your family. But accountability is not an attack." Kirk laughed again, louder this time. "Accountability? Coming from you? That's rich," he shot back. Rasheeda slammed her hand on the table, startling everyone. "Enough," she said, her voice cracking. "I am so tired of this. Every time we come into these rooms, it's the same thing. You angry, you defensive, and somehow I'm stuck in the middle cleaning up messes." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief second, Kirk looked caught off guard. "I'm doing this for us," he said, softer now, but still tense. "You don't see that?" She shook her head slowly. "I see you hurting us," she replied. Mona watched the exchange closely, knowing this was no longer just about her. "This is bigger than a meeting," she said. "This is about trust. And right now, trust is broken. Kirk turned back to her, his face hardening again. Maybe it was broken a long time ago, he said. That single sentence sent another wave of shock through the room. What did he mean by that? What history was being dragged to the surface now? Fans would later replay that moment over and over, searching for clues. The tension thickened as Rasheeda stood up, pushing her chair back. I need a minute, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As she walked away, cameras followed, capturing Kirk watching her leave, his jaw clenched, his eyes full of something that looked dangerously close to regret. Mona remained seated, composed, but the room could feel the shift. This wasn't just a heated argument anymore. It was the beginning of a fallout that threatened relationships, reputations, and everything they thought they had built together. Rasheeda's footsteps faded down the hallway, but the tension she left behind only grew louder. Kirk exhaled sharply and dropped back into his chair, rubbing his temples like the weight of the room had finally caught up to him. Mona didn't rush to speak this time. She let the silence stretch, knowing every second was being felt by everyone watching. Emotions ran high, and the energy had shifted from explosive to dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that comes before another storm. This didn't have to go like this, Mona finally said, her voice low and controlled. Kirk looked up at her, eyes tired but still defiant. Maybe not, he replied. But every time I open my mouth, it feels like I'm already guilty. Mona raised an eyebrow. Guilty of what, Kirk? She asked. That question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. For a moment, it looked like he might actually answer honestly. Instead, he leaned back and laughed without humor. Of everything, he said. That's how it always feels. In the hallway, Rasheeda leaned against the wall, wiping her eyes as a close friend approached her. You okay? The friend asked softly. Rasheeda shook her head. I'm embarrassed, she admitted. I'm hurt, and I'm tired of defending behavior that keeps hurting me. Fans are shocked by how raw her confession sounded, how stripped of filters she was in that moment. The friend nodded. You don't have to choose sides, she said. But you do have to choose yourself. Rasheeda closed her eyes, letting those words sink in. Back in the room, Kirk shifted in his seat. You know what really pisses me off? He said suddenly. Mona looked at him, unblinking. The way everybody acts like this just came out of nowhere. Like there ain't years of stuff that led up to this. Mona folded her hands. Then say it, she replied. Because right now, all anyone sees is you exploding. Kirk hesitated, jaw tight. You want me to say it on camera? He asked. Mona didn't flinch. This already happened on camera, she said. The question is whether you're willing to own it. That was the moment Kirk stood up again, pacing faster now, words spilling out. I've been biting my tongue for years, he said. Watching decisions get made about my family, my marriage, my image, and every time I push back, I'm labeled aggressive. Mona's tone stayed even. Or maybe you're labeled aggressive because of how you push back, she said. Kirk stopped pacing and turned toward her. You don't know what it's like, he snapped. To feel like your life is a storyline everybody else controls. Rasheeda watched the scene unfold on a monitor down the hall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Hearing Kirk speak that way stirred something complicated inside her. Part of her recognized his pain. Another part felt exhausted by it. He always does this, she murmured to her friend. He gets angry, then he turns it into everybody else's fault. The friend sighed. Hurt people, she said. But that don't mean you gotta keep bleeding for him. Inside the room, Mona leaned forward again. Nobody here is controlling your life, she said firmly. But when you agree to be in this space, there are expectations. Respect is one of them. Kirk shook his head. Respect goes both ways, he replied. And today, I felt disrespected first. That claim caused murmurs among those sitting nearby. A producer whispered, this is getting deep, while another quietly signaled to keep the cameras rolling. Rasheeda finally turned away from the monitor. I can't watch this anymore, she said, pushing herself off the wall. She took a deep breath and headed back toward the room, unaware that her return would shift everything once again. As she stepped inside, Kirk froze mid-sentence. Their eyes met, and for a split second, the anger faded into something more vulnerable. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said quietly. Rasheeda stared at him, tears threatening to spill again. But you did, she replied. And you keep doing it. The room went still as Mona watched the exchange unfold, knowing this confrontation was no longer about business or boundaries. It was about a marriage cracking under the weight of years of unresolved resentment. Fans would later say this was the moment they felt their hearts drop, realizing there was no easy fix coming. Rasheeda took a step forward. I need you to understand something, she said. Every time you lash out like this, you push me further away. Kirk swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. I don't know how else to fight, he admitted. Those words changed the energy again, turning anger into uncertainty. Mona leaned back, observing quietly as the couple stood at a crossroads. Nothing had been resolved yet, but something had been exposed. And as the cameras captured every breath, every glance, it became clear that this confrontation was only digging deeper, setting the stage for choices that would redefine everything moving forward. Kirk's admission hung in the air like a confession he didn't know how to take back. "I don't know how else to fight," he repeated, this time louder, almost desperate. Rasheeda stared at him, shaking her head slowly. "That's the problem," she said. "Everything with you is a fight. Even when I'm just asking you to listen." Her voice cracked, and fans are shocked by how vulnerable she sounded, like years of built-up pain were finally spilling out with no filter left to stop it. Mona cleared her throat softly, reminding everyone she was still there. "This right here," she said, gesturing between them, "this is what happens when emotions go unchecked for too long." Kirk turned toward her again, frustration flaring back up. "So now this is my fault too?" he snapped. Rasheeda stepped between them slightly, her body language protective but firm. "Stop," she said, "just stop. Not everything needs to turn into an argument." Kirk looked at her, wounded. "I feel like nobody's on my side," he muttered. Rasheeda exhaled sharply. "I've been on your side for years," she said. "But I can't keep defending behavior that keeps hurting me." Around the room, reactions were mixed. One friend wiped away tears, another shook her head in disbelief. A producer whispered, "This is real," and fans later echoed the same sentiment online, saying this moment felt less like reality TV and more like a marriage unraveling in front of millions. Kirk dropped back into his chair again, staring at the floor. "You think I wanted this?" he asked quietly. "You think I wake up trying to be the bad guy?" Rasheeda sat down across from him, her eyes softening just a bit. "No," she said, "but wanting better and doing better ain't the same thing." Mona leaned forward once more, choosing her words carefully. "Kirk, when you lashed out earlier, it wasn't just about anger. It was about feeling powerless," she said. Kirk looked up at her sharply. "Don't psychoanalyze me," he snapped. Mona didn't flinch. "I'm not," she replied calmly. "I'm telling you what everyone else can see." That statement caused Kirk to laugh bitterly. "Everyone always thinks they know me," he said. "But nobody ever asks how I got here." Rasheeda's patience thinned. "I've asked," she said firmly. "I've begged you to talk to me without yelling, without blaming, without turning everything into a war." Her voice rose. "And every time, you promise to change, then the next time we're under pressure, this is what happens." Kirk looked away, guilt flickering across his face. "Pressure changes people," he said weakly. "Pressure reveals people," Rasheeda shot back. The room fell quiet again, but this silence felt different. It wasn't explosive. It was heavy with truth. Mona shifted in her seat. "We can pause this," she offered. "Clearly emotions are raw." Kirk shook his head. "No," he said. "Let's finish it. I'm tired of running from this." Rasheeda raised an eyebrow. "Then say what you need to say," she replied. "But don't disrespect anyone else in the process." Kirk took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling. "I feel like I'm constantly being judged," he began. "By fans, by friends, by people who don't know the half of it." Fans are shocked as his voice cracked for the first time. "Every mistake I've ever made gets thrown back in my face like I'm not allowed to grow." Rasheeda listened, arms crossed but eyes attentive. "Growth comes with accountability," she said. "Not excuses." Kirk nodded slowly. "Maybe I'm bad at that," he admitted. That moment of honesty cracked something open. A close friend spoke up from the side. "We all mess up," she said. "But the way you react after matters." Kirk glanced at her, then back at Rasheeda. "I don't want to lose my family," he said. "But I don't know how to fix this either." Rasheeda swallowed hard. "Neither do I," she replied. "But pretending it's everyone else's fault isn't fixing it." Mona watched quietly, recognizing this was no longer her conversation to control. Still, Kirk's earlier outburst hadn't been forgotten. "There's also the issue of boundaries," she said carefully. Kirk sighed. "I know," he muttered. "I went too far." That admission caused a ripple through the room. Rasheeda looked at him sharply. "Say that again," she said. Kirk looked up. "I went too far," he repeated. "What I said was wrong." Emotions ran high as Rasheeda blinked back tears. "That's all I wanted," she said softly. "For you to own it." But just as it seemed like the storm might calm, Kirk added, "That doesn't mean I wasn't hurt too." The tension snapped back instantly. Rasheeda's shoulders stiffened. "There it is," she said. "You always gotta add something." Kirk frowned. "I'm just being honest," he replied. "Honesty without empathy is just another weapon," she shot back. Fans are shocked by how quickly hope turned back into frustration. Mona interjected again. "Both things can be true," she said. "You can be hurt and still be wrong in how you respond." Kirk nodded reluctantly. I hear that, he said. I just wish somebody heard me too. Rasheeda looked at him, exhaustion written all over her face. I hear you, she said. I just don't feel safe when you explode like that. That word, safe, hit hard. Kirk's eyes widened slightly. I never wanted you to feel unsafe, he said. Intent doesn't erase impact, Rasheeda replied. Outside the room, word was already spreading. Phones buzzed, assistants whispered, and fans watching later would say they could feel the shift through the screen. The family was left divided not because of one word, but because of years of unresolved pain finally colliding. Kirk leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What do you want from me? He asked. Rasheeda took a long breath. I want consistency, she said. Not apologies after explosions. Not promises when cameras are on. I want change. Kirk nodded slowly, eyes glossy. I don't know if I can be perfect, he said. Rasheeda shook her head. I never asked you to be, she replied. I asked you to be better. Mona watched the exchange, knowing fans would dissect every word, every pause, every look. This wasn't a clean resolution. It was messy, emotional, and unfinished. And as the cameras continued to roll, capturing the raw aftermath of the blow-up, one thing was painfully clear. This confrontation had opened wounds that couldn't be closed in one conversation, setting the stage for choices that would change everything from this point forward. The weight of Rasheeda's words settled deep into Kirk's chest, and for the first time since the blow-up, he didn't rush to respond. He just sat there, staring at his hands like they suddenly belonged to someone else. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were closing in on everything unsaid. Mona shifted slightly in her seat, sensing that whatever came next would either heal something or tear it open even wider. I don't know how to change overnight, Kirk finally said, his voice low and tired. But I don't want to keep living like this. Rasheeda looked at him carefully, like she was searching his face for the truth. Then stop making me your enemy, she replied. Stop making everybody your enemy. Her words weren't loud, but they carried more weight than any shout earlier. Emotions ran high again, but this time they were heavy with sadness instead of rage. A friend spoke up softly from the side. Maybe y'all need space, she suggested. Not distance, but space to breathe. Kirk shook his head. Every time we take space, it turns into silence, he said. And silence makes things worse. Rasheeda nodded slowly. Only because we never come back with solutions, she said. We just come back pretending nothing happened. Fans are shocked by how self-aware she sounded, like someone who had replayed these arguments in her head 1,000 times. Mona leaned forward, folding her hands. What happened today can't be undone, she said. But it can be addressed. Kirk sighed. I already said I was wrong, he muttered. Rasheeda looked at him sharply. You said the words, she said. But I need to see the work. That statement hit harder than any insult. Kirk swallowed. What does that even look like? He asked. Rasheeda didn't hesitate. Therapy, she said. Real conversations off camera. Accountability without excuses. The word therapy made Kirk tense. I don't need someone telling me I'm broken, he snapped reflexively. Rasheeda sighed. This isn't about being broken, she said. It's about being better. Mona nodded slightly. Seeking help isn't weakness, she added. Kirk looked around the room, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on him. I feel like I'm always the one under a microscope, he said. Maybe because you keep putting yourself there, Rasheeda replied. The tension spiked again, but Rasheeda quickly softened her tone. I'm not trying to attack you, she said. I'm trying to save us. That word, lingered in the air. Kirk's eyes glossed over. I don't want to lose you, he said quietly. Rasheeda closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. Then fight for me, she said. Not against everyone else. Around them, reactions shifted from shock to quiet empathy. One producer wiped her eyes. Another shook his head slowly, murmuring, this is heavy. Fans watching later would flood comment sections with messages about how real it felt, how uncomfortable and emotional it was to watch. The family was left divided not by sides, but by uncertainty, because nobody knew what would happen next. Kirk leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I feel like I've been carrying anger for so long, I don't even remember where it started, he admitted. Rasheeda looked at him sadly. That anger has been carrying you, she said. And it's dragging us both down. Mona watched in silence, knowing this was the kind of moment that defined people. Kirk nodded slowly. I don't want to be this person anymore, he said. Then don't be, Rasheeda replied simply. The simplicity of her answer seemed to break something in him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his shoulders slumping. I'm scared, he confessed. Scared that even if I try, it won't be enough. Rasheeda's voice softened. Trying is the only thing I've been asking for, she said. Not perfection. Effort. That distinction mattered, and for the first time, Kirk seemed to hear it. Mona cleared her throat gently. This conversation started with disrespect, she said, but it's turning into something else. Kirk looked at her, shame flickering across his face. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Mona met his gaze. I accept accountability, she replied. But understand this, words have consequences. Kirk nodded. I know, he said. And I'm sorry. The room exhaled collectively, though the tension didn't disappear completely. Just when it seemed like the worst had passed, a comment from the side reignited uncertainty. Sorry, don't erase patterns, someone muttered under their breath. Kirk's head snapped up. You think I don't know that? He snapped. Rasheeda raised her hand. Stop, she said firmly. This isn't about everybody else's opinions. Kirk clenched his jaw but nodded. You're right, he said. I'm slipping again. That self-awareness surprised everyone. Fans are shocked by how close Kirk seemed to the edge, yet how conscious he was of it. Rasheeda leaned back in her chair, exhaustion written all over her face. I can't keep riding this emotional roller coaster, she said. I need stability. Kirk looked at her. Tell me how to give you that, he said. Rasheeda shook her head slowly. I can't tell you, she replied. You have to choose it. The room grew quiet once more, but this silence felt reflective instead of hostile. Mona checked the time discreetly, knowing they had been there for hours. We don't have to solve everything today, she said. But we do have to acknowledge what broke. Kirk nodded. I broke it, he said. Rasheeda looked at him, tears slipping down her cheeks. We both did, she said. But I'm willing to fix it if you are. Kirk reached out hesitantly, stopping just short of touching her hand. I am, he said. Rasheeda looked at his hand, then back at his face. After a long pause, she placed her hand in his. The gesture was small, but it sent a ripple through the room. Fans watching later would say this was the moment that gave them hope, even though nothing was guaranteed. Mona watched the couple, knowing the story was far from over. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was messy, fragile, and uncertain. But it was honest. As the cameras continued to roll, capturing the aftermath of raised voices, broken trust, and raw admissions, one truth stood out clearly. The blow-up that started with one word had cracked open years of silence, and whatever came next would define whether this family could truly heal or finally fall apart. The room didn't erupt after that small gesture, but it didn't relax either. It felt like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see if this fragile moment would shatter just as quickly as it formed. Kirk's hand trembled slightly under Rasheeda's, and he pulled it back slowly, like he was afraid of doing or saying the wrong thing again. I don't expect you to trust me overnight, he said quietly. I just need you to believe I'm not your enemy. Rasheeda nodded, but her expression stayed guarded. Belief comes from patterns, she replied. Not moments. Mona shifted, sensing the emotional exhaustion washing over everyone. This is where things usually stop, she said calmly. People say the right words, then go back to old habits. Kirk looked at her, almost pleading. I don't want to be that guy anymore, he said. Mona met his gaze. Then you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, she replied. Real change doesn't feel good at first. Kirk nodded slowly, as if he knew that already but had never wanted to admit it. A producer quietly asked if they should wrap, but Rasheeda shook her head. No, she said. I need to say something. She turned to Kirk, her voice steady but heavy. When you called her that word, she said, something broke in me too. Not because of who it was directed at, but because I saw how easily you go there when you feel cornered. Kirk flinched. I hated myself the second I said it, he admitted. But that doesn't change the fact that I said it. Rasheeda nodded. Exactly. Emotions ran high again, but this time they came in waves instead of explosions. Kirk leaned back, eyes closed. I learned how to fight before I learned how to talk, he said. Where I come from, raising your voice was how you survived. Rasheeda listened, but she didn't soften the truth. We're not surviving anymore, she said. We're supposed to be building. That distinction hit hard. Kirk opened his eyes, staring at her. I don't want to tear down what we built, he said. Then stop swinging the wrecking ball, she replied. Around the room, people shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded, some looked away. Fans watching later would say this was the part that hurt the most, because it sounded like two people who loved each other but were exhausted from fighting the same battles over and over. The family was left divided emotionally, torn between hope and fear of disappointment. Mona spoke again, her voice softer now. Anger is usually fear wearing armor, she said. Kirk let out a breath. Then I've been armored up for years, he replied. Rasheeda looked at him, sadness in her eyes. And every time you put that armor on, she said, you shut me out. Kirk nodded slowly. I didn't know how else to protect myself, he said. But I see now it was costing me you. That realization seemed to shake him. He leaned forward again, urgency creeping into his voice. Tell me what you need right now, he said. Rasheeda paused, choosing her words carefully. I need honesty without defensiveness, she said. I need respect even when you're angry. And I need you to stop making me feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Kirk swallowed. I can try, he said. Rasheeda corrected him gently. You can do, she said. Trying is the beginning, not the finish. Another long silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was full of reflection. Kirk nodded slowly. Then I'm committing to doing, he said. Mona watched closely. Commitments mean nothing without follow-through, she said. Kirk didn't argue this time. I know, he replied. Just when it seemed like the conversation was winding down, Kirk spoke again, his voice lower. I need to say something else, he said. Rasheeda tensed slightly. What? She asked. Kirk hesitated. Part of my anger comes from feeling like I'm always on trial, he said. Like no matter what I do, people are waiting for me to mess up. Rasheeda sighed. That pressure is real, she said. But you can't keep punishing me for it. Kirk nodded. I don't want to, he said. I just didn't know how to separate the noise from us. Fans are shocked by how introspective the moment became, how the rage that once filled the room now felt replaced by something quieter and more dangerous, uncertainty. Because while apologies were said, and intentions were expressed, nobody knew if this time would actually be different. Rasheeda leaned back, rubbing her temples. I'm tired, she admitted. Not just physically. Emotionally. Kirk's voice softened. I see that now, he said. I wish I'd seen it sooner. Mona glanced at Rasheeda. Do you feel heard? She asked. Rasheeda thought for a moment. For the first time in a while, she said slowly, yes. But hearing and changing are two different things. Kirk nodded again. Then let me prove it, he said. Rasheeda didn't answer right away. She looked around the room, at the cameras, at the faces watching her. I don't want to perform healing, she said. I want real healing. Kirk agreed. Then let's take this off camera too, he said. That suggestion surprised some people. Fans watching later would debate whether it was genuine or strategic, but in the moment, it felt sincere. Mona stood up slightly, signaling the conversation was nearing its end. This started as a blow-up, she said. And it turned into a mirror. Kirk looked at her. I didn't like what I saw, he admitted. Mona nodded. Most people don't, she said. That's where growth begins. Kirk exhaled deeply, like he'd been holding that breath for years. Rasheeda stood as well, her posture tired but strong. I'm not promising anything, she said to Kirk. I'm not saying everything is okay. Kirk accepted that. I wouldn't believe you if you did, he replied. She looked at him, a sad smile flickering briefly. But I am saying I'm willing to see if you can show me something different, she continued. Kirk nodded. That's all I can ask for, he said. As people began to move, the energy in the room remained heavy but calmer. No one cheered, no one clapped, because this wasn't a victory. It was a pause, a fragile ceasefire built on honesty and exhaustion. Fans would later say this was one of the most uncomfortable yet compelling moments they'd ever watched, because it didn't end with a neat resolution. It ended with questions. Kirk lingered behind as others filtered out, looking around the emptying room. Mona approached him quietly. Words matter, she said. Kirk nodded. I learned that the hard way, he replied. Mona met his eyes. Make sure this lesson sticks, she said. Kirk swallowed. I intend to. Rasheeda waited near the door, arms folded loosely. Kirk walked toward her, stopping a few steps away. I'm gonna mess up, he said honestly. But I don't want to give up. Rasheeda held his gaze. Neither do I, she replied. But I won't stay if nothing changes. Kirk nodded, understanding the weight of that boundary. As they walked out together, not hand in hand but side by side, the cameras caught one last look at two people standing at the edge of something unknown. The blow-up that started with anger had turned into a reckoning, and while the future was uncertain, one thing was undeniable. Nothing between them would ever be the same again. Outside the room, the hallway buzzed with quiet chaos. Phones vibrated, whispers echoed, and the energy followed them like a shadow that refused to lift. Rasheeda walked a few steps ahead of Kirk, not rushing, not slowing, just moving forward like someone who needed air. Kirk trailed behind, replaying every word in his head, every look, every moment where he could have chosen differently. Emotions ran high even in silence, because nothing had been solved, only exposed. They reached the exit doors, and Rasheeda stopped. She didn't turn around at first. I need to be clear, she said, her voice steady but firm. Kirk froze behind her. I can't go back to pretending, she continued. I can't smile through pain just to keep peace. Kirk nodded, even though she couldn't see him. I know, he said quietly. And I don't expect you to. When she finally turned to face him, her eyes were tired, not angry. I need consistency, she repeated. Not grand speeches. Not moments. Consistency. Kirk swallowed. I hear you, he said. And I'm scared of failing, but I'm more scared of losing you. That fear lingered as they walked out together, greeted by flashing lights and curious stares. Fans are shocked watching later as the couple didn't hold hands, didn't smile, didn't play into any narrative. They looked real, raw, and unresolved. Friends approached cautiously, unsure whether to hug, speak, or stay silent. One whispered, "Are y'all okay?" Rasheeda forced a small smile. "We're honest," she replied. "That's all I can say right now." Inside, the room they left behind still felt heavy. Mona remained seated for a moment longer, staring at the empty chairs. She exhaled slowly, knowing the damage from words spoken in anger doesn't disappear when the cameras stop. Producers gathered their notes, some shaking their heads, others looking visibly moved. "That was intense," someone muttered. Another replied, "That was real," and that truth sat with everyone, because this wasn't manufactured drama anymore. It was fallout. Hours later, social media erupted. Clips circulated, slowed down, replayed, analyzed frame by frame. Fans are shocked by how quickly opinions split. Some defended Kirk, saying pressure can break anyone. Others stood firmly with Rasheeda, praising her strength and boundaries. Timelines filled with phrases like emotions ran high and the family was left divided, as strangers debated the future of a marriage they only saw through screens. But for Rasheeda and Kirk, the noise felt distant, drowned out by the quiet tension waiting for them at home. That night, the house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Rasheeda moved through the room slowly, taking off her shoes, setting down her bag, like she was relearning the space. Kirk stood near the doorway, unsure where he fit in that moment. "I'm not asking you to fix everything tonight," Rasheeda said without turning around. "I just need peace." Kirk nodded. "I can give you space," he said. She glanced at him. "Space isn't silence," she replied. "Don't disappear." Kirk met her eyes. "I won't," he promised. The days that followed weren't dramatic. They were awkward, cautious. Conversations were shorter, softer, filled with pauses. Kirk caught himself more than once, stopping before reacting, swallowing words he would have once thrown like weapons. Rasheeda noticed. She didn't praise him. She didn't relax completely. But she noticed. Fans watching later would say this was the unseen part of growth, the part that doesn't trend but matters most. Still, tension lingered. One evening, Kirk tried to joke, to lighten the mood. Rasheeda didn't laugh. "This isn't funny to me yet," she said gently. Kirk nodded. "I know," he replied. "I just don't want us to drown in heaviness." Rasheeda sighed. "We won't," she said. "As long as we don't ignore it." Those words became a quiet rule between them. Meanwhile, reactions from friends and family continued to pour in. Some called Kirk directly, offering tough love. Others reached out to Rasheeda, reminding her she wasn't alone. The family was left divided in opinions, but united in concern. "Don't lose yourself trying to save him," one voice warned her. "Don't lose her trying to defend yourself," another warned him. Those words echoed in both their minds. One afternoon, Kirk sat alone, staring at his phone, rereading messages he hadn't replied to. He finally typed one sentence to Rasheeda from the other room. "I scheduled an appointment." Her phone buzzed. She stared at the screen for a long moment before responding. "Thank you," she typed back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't celebration. But it was acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough. When they finally sat down together again, there were no cameras. No producers. No audience. Just two people stripped of performance. "I'm angry at myself," Kirk admitted. "For how long I made you carry this." Rasheeda listened quietly. "I'm angry too," she said. "But I'm also hopeful. And that scares me." Kirk nodded. "Hope feels risky," he said. Rasheeda looked at him. "So does staying," she replied. "But I'm here." Outside their bubble, the world kept speculating. Headlines exaggerated. Clips were taken out of context. Fans are shocked by how one word turned into 1,000 opinions. But inside that house, the drama wasn't loud anymore. It was subtle. It lived in choices. In restraint. In uncomfortable honesty. Kirk messed up sometimes, catching an edge in his tone, retreating instead of communicating. Rasheeda called it out every time. "Don't shut down," she'd say. And every time, it hurt his pride. But he stayed. One night, Kirk finally said what he'd been avoiding. "I'm ashamed," he admitted. "Not just of what I said, but of how easy it was for me to say it." Rasheeda nodded slowly. "That's what scared me," she said. "Not the word. The ease." Kirk looked down. "I'm learning to pause," he said. "It feels unnatural." Rasheeda replied, "Peace usually does when chaos feels familiar." Weeks passed. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened. Laughter returned in small doses. So did arguments, quieter now, less explosive. Fans would later debate whether it was growth or just another cycle. But Rasheeda felt the difference. Kirk felt it too, and both knew that one slip could undo everything. Eventually, they crossed paths with Mona again. The energy was different this time. Respectful, reserved. Kirk spoke carefully. I meant what I said, he told her. And I'm working on it. Mona nodded. That's all anyone can ask, she replied. But her eyes made it clear she hadn't forgotten. Words leave marks, even when apologies follow. As time moved on, the blow-up became a reference point. Not a joke, not a meme, a reminder. Whenever voices rose, Rasheeda would say, "Don't take us back there," and Kirk would stop. Breathe, recalibrate. Fans watching later would say that moment changed everything, not because it fixed the marriage, but because it forced truth into the open. The family was left divided in public opinion, but privately, a fragile unity formed around boundaries and effort. No one pretended it was perfect. No one promised forever. They promised honesty. And sometimes, that felt harder. Late one night, Rasheeda sat alone, reflecting. Kirk joined her quietly. "I know I hurt you," he said. "And I know sorry isn't enough." She nodded. "It never was," she said. "But change can be." Kirk looked at her. "I'm choosing that," he said. Rasheeda met his gaze. "Then keep choosing it," she replied. The blow-up that once felt like an ending now stood as a beginning of something uncertain. Not healed, not broken beyond repair, just exposed. And in that exposure, both of them saw each other clearly for the first time in a long time. Whether that clarity would save them or eventually separate them was still unknown. But one thing was undeniable. Nothing was buried anymore, and the silence that once protected them was gone forever. And now it's your turn to weigh in. After everything you just heard, after the blow-up, the apologies, the tears, and the uncomfortable truths, one question still hangs in the air. Was this moment the wake-up call that finally leads to real change, or was it just another calm before the next storm? Fans are shocked by how deep this went, and emotions ran high not just in that room, but across everyone watching from the outside. The family was left divided, not only between the people involved, but among viewers who can't agree on what comes next. Do you believe Kirk can truly break old patterns and show consistency, not just words? Or do you think Rasheeda has already given more chances than anyone should? Some of you might see growth starting, others might see red flags that can't be ignored. Either way, this story is far from over, and your perspective matters more than ever. If this moment made you feel something, if it made you angry, hopeful, conflicted, or even uncomfortable, make sure you show that support. Hit that like button to let us know you're locked in. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next, because if this situation unfolds any further, you'll want to hear every update as it happens. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you stand. Are you rooting for healing, or do you think walking away might be the real act of strength here? This conversation doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. It continues with you. So speak up, share your take, and stay tuned, because when emotions run this high and nothing is left unsaid, the next chapter is always the most unpredictable one yet.